Greetings friends, welcome to my channel and welcome to another video. Today you may notice by the title and the thumbnail we're doing something totally different. This might not be a total surprise to you if you saw my channel changes video earlier in the year, but you probably already saw this coming. I am going to start dipping my little toe into the true crime content on my YouTube channel. I'm finally doing it. This is something I'm really interested in, so it's not, it might seem random, but it's not. This is something that I consume daily, whether it be YouTube, books, IDTV. Go is my shit, and my favorite thing to do with my gammy is we get together, we drink mimosas, and we watch IDTV all day. I'm also taking administration of justice classes in college right now, and I have 2 other classes next semester. It doesn't really matter, but this is like my interest, and it's what I consume most of, and I don't know what it is. It's not a creepy thing, it's just like I like it, and I like to learn about it. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk about a true crime case while I do my makeup. It's gonna be like a get ready with me, but with murder. Get ready with murder? Is that the name? We gotta workshop that a little bit, I think, but that could be the name. What do you think? Let me know down below. Okay, so off subject, but definitely on subject. If you've been on my channel in the past, you may remember that in almost every single video that I didn't film with this little backdrop, my couch behind me, I had a little picture in the background of Ghostface with a pile of kittens, and Ghostface is the killer from Scream, if you're unfamiliar. Literally every video had that, and it's because Scream is my favorite movie of all time. Now, did you know that the killer in Scream, Ghostface, the killer in Scream, was actually inspired by an actual serial killer? Did you know that? If you didn't, well, you're gonna learn today. This video is on the Gainesville Ripper, and he is the inspiration for the character who is the murderer in the movie Scream, my favorite movie of all time, so it just felt fitting to do my first murder video on the serial killer who inspired my favorite movie. Just makes sense to me. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to join the Brat Pack. I put out new videos every week, and I would love to have you here to see future ones and hang out with me and everyone else who hangs out here weekly. Now, just a disclosure, we're gonna be talking about some messed up things today. It's about murder, it's about a serial killer, so viewer discretion is advised. We're gonna be talking about some messed up stuff. Let's start putting on some makeup and get into it. Let's go. So the Gainesville Ripper is a serial killer who was active during the late 80s and early 90s in Gainesville, Florida, as well as Shreveport, Louisiana. But most of his killings that he's known for, and the majority of them, were done in Gainesville, hence Gainesville Ripper. Now I'm gonna give you a little bit of backstory just for context. It's to explain, not excuse his actions. Trust me, this guy's an asshole. I am not a sympathizer with him. The Gainesville Ripper's real name was Danny Rawling, and he was born in 1954 to parents Claudia and James. Suffice it to say, growing up for Danny was not good. He didn't have a fun time. His parents weren't ideal for his development. Danny also had a brother, but we're not going to talk about his brother today because I didn't look up enough information on him. It didn't feel relevant to the conversation we're having. But anyways, Danny and his mom were both aggressively abused, both physically and mentally, by his father, James, who was a police officer, mind you. He was a police officer. The abuse lasted for years, and the physical abuse consisted of punching, beating them with belts. I know I read somewhere that Danny had gotten a puppy, and his dad murdered the puppy, like beat the puppy so much that it died in Danny's arms. It's messed up. He would tie Danny up, and he would like take his knuckles and like grind them into the top of his head. Just messed up stuff. And I read that this happened weekly, sometimes 2 times a week, sometimes more, but it was constant. And all of this was happening from a guy who was meant to protect and serve people while he's abusing his children and his wife. Anyways, Danny wasn't happy with his mom because he thought that she didn't protect him from the abuse, but she was going through her own abuse herself. She would try to leave, and James would punch her in the face. He'd abuse her. It got so bad, she would try to leave, she'd come back. She'd try to leave, she'd come back. And it got so bad at one point that she ended up having a nervous breakdown and was hospitalized for it. It's sad. I feel like you see these stories a lot where women try to get out of these situations, and the men, you know, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna change, and you just get into this cycle where you keep coming back, and then it just takes a toll physically and mentally on you until you're broken down. And how are you supposed to like defend your children and be there for them when you can't even really be there for yourself? It's a sad thing. Don't get me wrong. He still sucks, but that sucks. Everything sucks. So Danny obviously had a lot of issues from the way he was raised. And he ended up into legal trouble starting in his teenage years. He would get caught peeping into women's windows, being a little creep, peeping Tom. His dad caught him once and beat the crap out of him for it. He would get in trouble for underage drinking, and I think he got arrested for that as well. Oh, and he liked to shoot animals. Just gonna add that because that is one of those things that you see a lot in serial killers. They like to kill animals. Well, Danny liked to shoot animals too. So we're gonna fast forward a little bit to Danny in his a little bit of older years. He wanted to join the Navy, but he failed the exam that you needed to take to be able to be enlisted. Like whatever requirements are required, he did not meet them. So instead he joined the Air Force, but he was eventually asked to leave on honorable discharge. I'm not sure why it would be honorable and not dishonorable, but of course that was unfortunate for him because he was just trying to find something to do, I imagine, try to get his life together and in order, and that didn't really work out for him. The same year that he was discharged from the Air Force, he also got arrested on drug possession and was diagnosed with a behavioral personality disorder. Just gotta clip the bangs back real quick so we can bronze the forehead that will then be covered by the bangs. Cool. Good. So after getting discharged, it seems like he was trying to get his life together. He moved to Shreveport, Louisiana, and he joined a church, and that's actually where he met his future wife. He did end up getting married, and he had one daughter. Unfortunately, that didn't end up lasting. I wonder why. It ended in divorce. I'm sure, I just can't imagine, like, knowing what he would go on to do later, that he was super nice to women. But I don't know. It didn't work. They got divorced. And it's said that same year, Danny committed his first known rape, and it was against a woman who looked like his ex-wife. So from 1979 to 1988, Danny was in and out of prison a lot on various charges for armed robbery, things of that nature, and he actually tried to escape prison several times. He was that guy. He's like, I'm not doing this, and tried to leave. He was paroled in 1988 in Mississippi, and then he traveled back to Shreveport, Louisiana. He ended up finding a job there, but it didn't last long. He was already fired by 1989, and at that time he threatened to kill the cook, I think it was a restaurant, and the manager after he was fired, and that is the year that he committed his first known murders. So on November 4th, 1989, that's actually my birthday, I would have been turning 1, on November 4th, 1988, which is the day Danny lost his job. He murdered 3 people in Shreveport, Louisiana. It was a family of 3, a girl named Julie Grissom, her father Tom Grissom, and her 8-year-old nephew, Sean. Julie was the obvious target. They could tell by everything that was done to her body. She had been bound with tape, raped, and stabbed to death. Her body was posed after her death. He had pulled her to the edge of the bed and fanned her hair out around her head. Just, you know, weird stuff, weird ritualistic stuff, like not just a kill and leave, like he took time with her. And these murders went unsolved for a while before they were eventually connected with Danny after his Gainesville murders. We're gonna fast forward a little bit here to May of 1990. And so I'm a little bit unclear on exactly what was going on here, but Danny is now 37. And I believe he's still living with his parents, even though his dad was so abusive, which I don't really understand. I guess if you have nowhere else to go, I'm not sure, but I couldn't confirm for sure if he was still living with his parents, but I believe he was. And he got in an altercation with his father. During this fight, he ended up shooting his dad twice, once in the stomach, I believe, and once in the head. Somehow his father lived through that, but Danny didn't realize his dad lived from that, and he fled. He was like, oh, I killed him, I better, like, go. And he ran. But his father did live. Now that leads us to the killings in Gainesville. I hope you're still with me. I know that was a lot of backstory, but again, it's just to explain, not to excuse. So in August 1990, 2 college girls, Christina Powell, who was 17, and Sonia Larson, who was 18, had just moved into an apartment together. I believe it was like near their campus because they were both in school together. They had been at Walmart picking out some new items for their place, getting excited, shopping, grabbing new things, I don't know, a toaster, whatever you need when you're in college, a microwave, and that is when Rawlings spotted them at Walmart and then followed them home when they left and started to stalk them. That night, he entered the apartment and found Christina sleeping on the couch, and he just stood over her for a while and watched her sleep, which is so horrifying to me that it creeps me out so much to even consider that. And then he left her alone and he went upstairs where he found Sonia. He then proceeded to murder Sonia. He stabbed her a total of 20 times and then pulled her body to the edge of the bed and posed her suggestively. I don't want to get too graphic. I mean, we're going to get graphic in this, but he posed her in a way that would embarrass her. You know what I mean? He then went downstairs and proceeded to rape and murder Christina. She died by being stabbed. She was stabbed 5 times in the back. This part's going to be a little bit graphic. I'm just going to give you a warning. I'm not laughing. I'm just like uncomfortable. He then proceeded to cut off her nipples, and he took them with him as trophies. She was then posed suggestively at the end of the bed, and he presumably left. The next day, the parents, I believe it was of Christina, had been trying to get a hold of her. She had moved into a new place and they weren't able to get a hold of her, so they started to get rightfully nervous. Their young daughter is out on her own and not returning their phone calls, so they actually went over to her apartment the following day to check on her. When they arrived, they knocked on the door and she wasn't answering, and they started to get worried because her car was in the driveway. So they're like, okay, her car's here, she's not answering, we should probably call the police, which they did, and they discovered their bodies. The next day, another girl was reported missing. Her name was Christina Hoyt, and she was 18. She was found to be missing because she actually worked for the county sheriff's department as a clerk, I believe, and she was supposed to show up for a shift and didn't. So people got nervous and went to check on her. The police went to check on her. This one's even more graphic, so bear with me here. When they entered the apartment, they found Chris dead. She had been stabbed to death like the others, and she too was posed suggestively on the end of the bed. Her nipples had been removed and were set on the bed beside her, not taken, and the killer had decapitated her and taken her head and placed it on a bookshelf so that it was facing her body that was like seated and posed. Can you imagine being the person that finds that scene? How do you ever unsee something like that? I have no idea. And later they found that Danny had actually come to Chris' house, and Chris wasn't home at the time, so he stayed in her apartment and hid and waited for her. And that right there is my actual nightmare. I'm always terrified of that exact thing happening to me coming home and not realizing somebody's already in my house. I always look at my dog and I'm like, how are you acting? Because I feel like if someone was in my house, you'd be acting kind of weird, and you're acting pretty cool, so I'm going to assume you're pretty cool. But that's so scary to me. I can't even imagine how these poor girls must have felt. It's fucked up. So Krista's crime scene was a little weird. I mean, besides the obvious reasons that it was weird, because it seemed, based on, I believe, the blood pooling and the lividity in the body, that she had been dead several hours and had remained in a laying position prior to her decapitation and posing. So there's 2 different reasons that I found online as to why this could have been, and I couldn't determine which one was actually fact, so I'll just tell you both. The first, which is the creepiest of all to me, is that he spent several hours in the apartment with her body for whatever reason, and just let her lay there before he posed her and decapitated her. And the other option is that he thought he forgot his wallet, I believe it was, at her place, so he went back and then just decided, hey, I'm going to now do this. But based on his other murders, he was one to pose, so I don't know why he would leave and not have done that. So it leads me to think maybe he was hanging out in the apartment, which is just so, like, what would he be doing? I don't know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know about that. It's just, both options are horrible, and nothing about this is ideal. Let's be real. So the next morning, 2 more students were reported missing. They were both 23 years old, Tracy Paulus and Manny Tabawada, I think is how you say his last name. They were both 23, and they were roommates who lived together. Friends had been trying to get a hold of them and were unable, and I think at this time the reports of the murders had already gotten out, so people were a little bit nervous. So they went to the apartment and they asked the manager or maintenance man, I'm not sure which, to open up the door because they were worried, and he did, which is weird. They usually won't do that, but I'm glad that they did, because it said that when they opened the door, first off, they could see Tracy's body like right from the doorway. She was laying in the hallway, And they said that there was a black bag beside her, and they quickly closed the door and called the police. But when the police got there, the black bag was gone. So they think it's possible. Oh, and Tracy was not mutilated or posed. So they believe that it's possible that when the maintenance man and their friends went to the unit, that Danny was still in there working, and that they scared him away, and that's why he was unable to do that. So Tracy had been dragged into the hallway, and she suffered 3 stab wounds to her back, where Manny was killed in his bed, and he was stabbed a lot. It showed that he had fought back, and he was a big guy. I think he was like 6'2". He was like a big jock. And he was said to have been murdered first and stabbed a lot of times so that he could be out of the way for Danny to get to Tracy. So Manny's death sent a new wave of unease through people in the community, because prior to Manny, the victims had been a very specific type. They were all petite, pretty, young girls, all with dark hair and dark eyes. And with Manny's death, it kind of gave people the feeling that nobody was safe. You could think, like, hypothetically, if you were a tall blonde, that you were probably safe, or if you were a man, you were probably safe. But after Manny's death, it just made people feel like no one was actually safe, and that anybody could be a victim of this monster. And gun stores in Gainesville and surrounding areas sold out. People were like, I'm gonna arm up, I'm gonna be able to protect myself, and sold out guns in the area. People were scared, dude. I would be scared. I don't know what I would do if that was going on around me. I have no idea. So after Manny and Tracy, the murders seemed to stop, which was good, obviously, because it gave investigators a chance to actually look at the cases and see the similarities and try to, look at the evidence and see what they could figure out, because this was happening back to back to back. So I can't even imagine. They must have just been running rampant trying to keep up with everything new that was coming out and every new body that was being discovered. And when they started to look at the similarities and how things were connected, it got very obvious that these were actually all connected, because you have to have evidence to support that, not just a feeling. And in looking at them, it was like, okay, this is obviously the same person. First, all the victims had a sliding glass door entrance, and the backyard where the sliding glass door was wooded, like where he could go and stalk the victims. At all the locations, they had a yard like this where he could stand out there and not be seen and watch you. In addition to the yards, the same murder weapon was used in each case, which obviously right there is a huge deal. The biggest of deals, I imagine. There was a sexual assault at each crime scene. All the girls had been bound with duct tape, and the duct tape had been taken from the crime scene by the perpetrator. All the women had been posed suggestively, as we stated, and all the women had actually been bound by the duct tape, and while bound, they were able to tell by the cuts, had their clothing cut from their body after they were already bound. Except for their bras. He chose to forcibly rip their bras from their body instead of cutting them off with the rest of their clothes, and he did that every time, which is so... I think personally that was just to scare them even more, because that's like such an intimate piece of clothing, and just to have it forcibly ripped, that had to hurt and that had to be terrifying. The killer seemed to know what cops would be looking for, because gloves were always worn, which now that just seems like common. I don't know. I imagine anyone who kills now would wear gloves because everyone knows that you need to. Maybe they didn't then. But he also washed 2 of the bodies, so he had an idea of what people would be looking for. But lucky for investigators, he wasn't as smart as he thought he was, because he did leave DNA at least one of the crime scenes. I know that there was DNA found. I think it was actually semen, which of course it was. So investigators put together a profile of who they thought their killer would be, and what they came up with was pretty spot on. I feel like it usually is, not always, but profiles are usually pretty good, and they always sound pretty similar to me, because serial killers are always pretty similar. Not always, but oftentimes. When you hear this, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, that sounds like all of them. But I mean, it does sound like all of them, because that's who they are. They said he would be a white male in his 20s to 30s with a tall, athletic build. He would likely be a loner and single and have a criminal past that probably included some violence. He would likely not be religious and have a military background of some sort. Sounding familiar? I think so. And he would also have a knowledge of police work. And don't forget, Danny's father was a cop. So the police initially had another suspect who wasn't Danny, this poor guy. I'm not gonna show any pictures of him. I'm showing pictures throughout this, and I'm not gonna show any pictures of him because I feel like he's gotta hate having his name forever associated with this case. But this guy didn't sound super great either, and probably is a problem as well. I should look into him and see what he ended up doing, because a lot of people told the police, like, hey, you might want to check this guy out. His name was Edward Humphrey, and he was actually a neighbor of one of the victims. I believe it was Tracy and Manny. I believe he had lived at the apartment complex and had a crush on Tracy. I could be wrong. I'll put down below if it was one of the other girls, but I know he lived in one of the apartment complexes and had a crush on one of the victims. But another reason they suspected him is because, in addition to being recommended by people, 3 days after the last murders, he was arrested for assaulting his grandmother. Who hurts a grandma? A dick. So Humphreys was taken to a mental health facility and he was diagnosed as bipolar. And while he was there, the police decided to question him about the murders because they're like, this guy seems intense and whoever's killing these people is intense, so let's try to question him. And he seemed to have information that he should not have. I couldn't find out what it was, but it must have not been anything real since this guy turned out to not have actually done it. But because of that, they actually ended up searching his apartment too. And all of this is happening while he's in jail for the assault, and his bail was set for $1 million, which I don't know about bails, but especially for the 90s and for an assault, that seems very high. I think maybe they wanted to keep him in jail because they thought he had committed these other crimes, which I don't think you're actually supposed to be able to do. I don't think you can ask for higher bail because you're suspected of something else. I think it can only be independent of what you're arrested for, but that's what it sounds like they were trying to do. And while he was unable to make bail, they searched his apartment, and the authorities said when they got there, it was like the weirdest physical representation of a bipolar disordered person. That's a weird way to put that, but they said his apartment looked to be like split in half, where one half was super neat and super orderly and put together, and the other side was super dark, like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, broken items, just really dark and creepy. And they're like, oh, this might be our guy. And they found a lot of knives and screwdrivers, and that's actually what the killer had used to break into the victims' houses, was a screwdriver, killed with a knife. So they were like, we got our guy, right? So while this is all going on, they had sent his DNA in for testing. During all this, they had sent his DNA for testing against the DNA that they had found at the crime scenes. That's what I was trying to say. And when they finally got the DNA results back, it wasn't him, and they had to move on from Mr. Humphreys. So I imagine at this point, they were feeling pretty like hopeless because they had no other real leads. They had like a suspect list. I think there was like 600 people, but they didn't have anything specific. So they turned to the FBI to use their database to see if there were any similar crimes to these crimes in any other states, any other counties, you know, trying to see, hey, maybe we can find more if we go back, you know? And in doing so, they found a triple homicide in Shreveport, Louisiana, that had exact circumstances. Remember the Grissom family that we talked about earlier. With that information, they went through their suspect list of like the 600 plus people and tried to see who had also been in Louisiana, because it seemed like it was the same guy. And they were able to connect the cases. I imagine through DNA. Either way, they knew it was the same person. I can't remember if it was DNA or if it was just that they were like, oh, these are the same circumstances, but I think it was DNA. And at this point, it was a little unclear how the authorities got specifically to Danny. I don't know if Danny had already been suspected in the Shreveport, how do you say that name? Shreveport, let me know down below. I'm messing this up. Case. But one report I read said that they had arrested somebody and had somebody in custody that had been arrested for an armed robbery, or they had a suspect in an armed robbery who had also lived in Louisiana. So they connected the dots and they came up with the name Danny Rawling. And they found that he was also wanted for attempted murder of his father in Louisiana. See, it's all coming together. Puzzle pieces. So, in looking into Danny Rawling, they found that he was prone to armed robberies. So, they looked to see if there had been any armed robberies in Gainesville on and around the murders, and they found that there had been a bank robbery the same day as one of the murders. Okay, now this part's going to be a little bit confusing, so stay with me here. So, the day that Danny committed the bank robbery, he was actually almost caught that day for the bank robbery. He committed this bank robbery with one other person. This person was not connected to the murders. He was just like another criminal that committed the bank robbery with Danny, and they had almost been caught, but Danny escaped into the woods, and his partner ended up getting caught, but his partner didn't even have his real name. So when Danny escaped into the woods for the bank robbery, they followed him. So when they followed him into the woods, at, you know, only knowing him, I believe at this time, as a suspect of a bank robbery. I don't believe that they knew that he was the Gainesville Ripper at this point. They chased him trying to find him, and they found a campsite in the woods that they believed belonged to the bank robber. And when they searched the campsite, they found a bunch of evidence that at the time they didn't realize was connected to the murder, but they knew it was connected to the bank robbery because they found like the bag of money with the explosive paint in it. You feel me? So they took all of that into evidence and they saved it. But it took months for them to actually look over it, which is, you know, I don't know how policing works, but now, after this, since he was almost caught, since he just killed a bunch of people and he was almost caught on bank robbery, he fled. He was like, I'm out. Later, all of that happened in August 1990, and on September 7th, 1990, he committed another robbery, an armed robbery of a grocery store. Police quickly responded to this one, and after a short chase, they caught him, and they took him into custody. Now, when they took him in for the robbery, they took DNA from him, they took blood, I believe they took a tooth from a recent extraction, and he was also told by authorities that he was going to need to give 50 pubic hairs. I think at this point they might have ran, I don't know why they needed the pubic hairs if they weren't suspecting him of the murders. Maybe they had, I didn't find clarity on that, but this crazy guy, he stood up, he dropped his pants, exposed himself, and grabbed 2 fistfuls of pubic hair, and was like, this should do it. Ow and ew. Danny was then linked to the murders based on the DNA he gave matching the DNA at the crime scenes, as well as the campsite. And I mean, he's caught at this point. Like, your DNA matches, you're gonna go away, we know it was you. And so he agreed to confess, but he agreed to confess in the weirdest way. So Danny had befriended a guy. Don't worry, I'm still talking about the confession. It's just a little bit weird, so I'm gonna explain. But Danny had become friends with another inmate named Bobby Lewis. And Bobby Lewis was the only convict who had ever escaped the prison on death row. And as we may remember, Danny had also tried to escape prison previously. So I believe that he became Bobby Lewis's friend so that he could learn how he had escaped, and maybe they could try to escape together, you know, be like little homeboys. So it was definitely, in my opinion, a self-serving friendship. But for some reason, and I don't understand why, it's super weird, he would only confess if he could have Bobby Lewis there. And instead of him talking, he would either tell Bobby Lewis what happened, or they would ask questions and he would whisper the answer into Bobby Lewis's mouth, and then Bobby Lewis would do the answering. I don't know. Super weird. Makes no sense to me. But that's what they did. And it took a long time, but they ended up confessing to everything. He confessed to everything he had done. They were like, hell yeah, that took a while, but we got this. We got this guy. He admitted in this confession that in order to get from crime scene to crime scene, he would actually ride a bicycle because it was quick and quieter than a car. He confessed to seeing the first 2 girls at Walmart and following them home, and also let them know that he watched Christina sleep like a creep. And he stated that the reason he killed 8 people is because he had previously been incarcerated a total of 8 years for his various other crimes, and that he wanted to kill 1 person per year of his life that was taken from him being in jail. But authorities don't believe that that's true. They believe that it's coincidence that there was 8 years and 8 victims because he fled because he was close to getting caught, and that he would have continued killing had he not been caught by authorities, which I agree with. I don't feel like a person who takes the time to do what he did, the mutilation, the posing, the taking of the trophies, I don't think you would just stop doing that and be like, oh, well, there's 8, I'm good. Like, I don't believe that that's how that works. I don't think a brain can just give up on that, because he obviously liked it. So Danny tried to make people think that he wasn't in control of his actions when he committed the murders, that he would just be overtaken at night by something he couldn't control. He called it an alternate personality that he named Gemini, and I looked into it, and he was a Gemini, but I think this is all sort of bullshit. I think it's bullshit for a couple reasons. One, it just sounds ridiculous to me. I'm not downplaying the fact that people can have mental illnesses, but I don't believe he did. And on top of that, while he was in prison, he told other people there and other inmates that, you know, people that he didn't have a benefit. He didn't benefit from lying to them about his motives, and he said that he wanted to be a hot shot, like a rock star murderer like Ted Bundy. And that's what I believe was the real motive. I don't think that he was crazy. I think that he liked killing people and he wanted to be famous because he didn't get the attention that he wanted when he was growing up, like not positive attention. So he wanted to be seen as important and big and more than like Ted Bundy did. So initially Danny planned with his attorneys to plead innocent due to insanity, but at the last minute, without speaking to his attorneys, he stood up and he pleaded guilty. And people believe that this was like a one last effort of control of the situation, which I agree with. I don't know, maybe he felt bad, who knows? Who knows with people like that? I don't see how you could feel bad. I don't see how you could feel bad after looking into somebody's eyes and raping them and murdering them. But let me know what you think. I sort of think that he just wanted to get control of the situation, and his only way to do that was to say like, I did this. I did this, I wanted to do this, this is what I did, and so he did. Which honestly I think is good. I doubt that he would have gotten off on insanity anyway, because let's be real. If Jeffrey Dahmer could not be diagnosed as legally insane, what chance does any other human being have of getting off on that plea? Why do they always try it? I don't know, because wow, Jeffrey Dahmer, what a case. If he's not insane, I do not know who is insane, because too much. In October 2006, 16 years after his first murder, Danny Rawling ate his final meal of lobster, shrimp, a baked potato, cheesecake, and sweet tea. He was then put to death by lethal injection, and it is reported that he had no last words. He simply sang a hymn to himself and stared up into the eyes of all the families of all the victims that he had murdered. And that is the story of the Gainesville Ripper. I know that was heavy, and sometimes it's easy to look at these cases that have been, it's been a while since it happened. It's so fantastical that it's hard to sometimes remember that this happened to real people, and this isn't just like just a story, but these were real people and this did actually happen. The people that Danny Rawling killed were all young, innocent people with full lives left to live, and this asshole just came in for his own selfish reasons and snuffed it short in a terrifying way that I can't even imagine experiencing. I can't imagine looking up at somebody attacking you and knowing that they're going to kill you. Like, I can't imagine that they did not know that was gonna happen, and that's just so horrifying. And I understand that he had a bad childhood, and I get that. That's unfortunate. No kid should ever be brought up that way, and no one should ever be treated that way when they're younger, but there are plenty of people who have had bad childhoods, who have been abused and have been neglected and have been hurt, who have not grown up to kill people. Plain and simple. That's how it is. He chose to kill people, and he did kill people, and he is an asshole. With that said, that completes this video. Please let me know down below of any cases that you would like to hear me cover. I have a whole list in my phone of ones that I want to cover that I've already looked into or I'm interested in. I've already started doing research on another case, one that I already know about and I've already read books on, but I wanted to get more details on, and I swear every time you start looking into these cases, you think you know, and then you learn so much more that you had no idea. And man, the one that I'm looking into now, it is a doozy. Please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and hitting the bell, because I put out new videos every week and I would love to hang out with you. And of course, thank you for being here when you could be anywhere else. I was gonna say in the world, but it's more on the internet because we still can't really go places right now where we shouldn't be. And I hope to see you in my next video.